Let's talk more about members, which define the who part of who can do what on which resource. There are 5 different types of members: Google accounts, service accounts, Google groups, Google workspace domains, and cloud identity domains. A Google account represents a developer, an administrator, or any other person who interacts with Google Cloud. Any email address that is associated with a Google account can be an identity including gmail.com or other domains. New users can sign up for a Google account by going to the Google account sign up page without receiving mail through Gmail. A service account is an account that belongs to your application instead of an individual end user. When you run code that is hosted on Google Cloud, you specify an account that code should run as. You can create as many service accounts as needed to represent the different logical components of your application. A Google group is a named collection of Google accounts and service accounts. Every group has a unique email address that is associated with that group. Google groups are a convenient way to apply an access policy to a collection of users. You can grant and change access controls for a whole group at once instead of granting and changing access controls one at a time for individual users or service accounts. A workspace domain represents a virtual group of all the Google accounts that have been created in an organization's workspace account. Workspace domains represent your organization's internet domain name, such as example.com. And when you add a user to your workspace domain, a new Google account is created for the user inside of this virtual group, such as username at example.com. Google Cloud customers who are not workspace customers can get these same capabilities through Cloud Identity. Cloud Identity lets you manage users and groups using Google Admin Console, but you do not pay for or receive Workspace's collaboration products such as Gmail, Docs, Drive, and Calendar. Now, it's important to note that you cannot use IAM to create or manage your users or groups. Instead, you can use Cloud Identity or Workspace to create and manage users. A policy consists of a list of bindings. A binding binds a list of members to a role, where the members can be user accounts, Google groups, Google domains, and service accounts. A role is a named list of permissions defined by IAM. Let's revisit the IAM resource hierarchy. A policy is a collection of access statements attached to a resource. Each policy contains a set of roles and role members, with resources inheriting policies from their parent. Think of it like this. Resource policies are a union of parent and resource, where the less restrictive parent policy will always override the more restrictive resource policy. The IAM policy hierarchy always follows the same path as the Google Cloud resource hierarchy, which means that if you change the resource hierarchy, the policy hierarchy also changes. For example, moving a project into a different organization will update the project's IAM policy to inherit from the new organization's IAM policy. Also, child policies cannot restrict access granted at the parent level. For example, if we grant you the editor role for Department X, and we grant you the viewer role at the bookshelf project level, you still have the editor role for that project. Therefore, it is best practice to follow the principle of least privilege. The principle applies to identities, roles, and resources. Always select the smallest scope that's necessary for a task in order to reduce your exposure to risk. You can also use a recommender for role recommendations to identify and remove excess permissions from your principals, improving your resources security configurations. Each role recommendation suggests that you remove or replace a role that gives your principals excess permissions. At scale, these recommendations help you enforce the principle of least privilege by ensuring that the principals only have the permissions that they actually need. Their recommender identifies excess permissions using policy insights. Policy insights are ML-based findings about permission usage in your project folder or organization. IAM conditions allow you to define and enforce conditional attribute-based access control for Google Cloud resources. With IAM conditions, you can choose to grant resource access to identities, members, only if configured conditions are met. For example, this could be done to configure temporary access for users in the event of a production issue, or to limit access to resources only for employees making requests from your corporate office. Conditions are specified in the role bindings of a resource's IAM policy. When a condition exists, the access request is only granted if the condition expression evaluates to true. Each condition expression is defined as a set of logic statements allowing you to specify one or more attributes to check. An organization policy is a configuration of restrictions, defined by configuring a constraint with the desired restrictions for that organization. An organization policy can be applied to the organization node and all folders or projects within that node. Descendants of the targeted resource hierarchy inherit the organization policy that has been applied to their parents. Exceptions to these policies can be made, but only by a user who has the organization policy admin role. What if you already have a different corporate directory? How can you get to your users and groups into Google Cloud? Using Google Cloud Directory Sync, your administrators can log in and manage Google Cloud resources using the same usernames and passwords that they already use. This tool synchronizes users and groups from your existing Active Directory or LDAP system with users and groups in your cloud identity domain. The synchronization is one way only, which means that no information in your Active Directory or LDAP map is modified. Google Cloud Directory Sync is designed to run scheduled synchronizations without supervision after its synchronization rules are set up. Google Cloud also provides single sign-on authentication. If you have your own identity system, you can continue using your own system and processes with SSO configured. When authentication is required, Google will redirect to your system. If the user is authenticated in your system, access to Google Cloud is given. Otherwise, the user is prompted to sign in. This allows you also to revoke access to Google Cloud. If your existing authentication system supports SAML2 SSO, configuration is as simple as 3 links and a certificate, as shown on the slide. Otherwise, you can use a third-party solution like ADFS, Ping, or Okta. For more information about using your existing identity management system, see the link section of this video. Also, if you want to use a Google account but are not interested in receiving mail through Gmail, you can still create an account without Gmail. For more information about this, see the link section of this video.